Let's turn back to politics now and a new chapter for our next guest.
Heaven forbid we pass something that's going to help the damn workers in the United States of America. Heaven forbid we tilt the balance that has been going in the wrong direction for 50 years. We talk about pensions, you complain. We talk about the minimum wage increase, you complain. We talk about giving them the right to organize, you complain. But if we were passing a tax cut here, you'd be all getting in line to vote yes for it. Now stop talking about Dr. Seuss and start working with us on behalf of the American workers.
Amen. During his 20 years representing Ohio in Washington, former Congressman Tim Ryan focused on helping America's blue-collar workers. And now, as a private citizen, he is using his experience to bring working-class voters back to the Democratic Party with his newly announced partnership with the think tank Third Way. And former Congressman Ryan joins us now. It is great to see you. Loved that speech when it happened, and it ages quite well. So I'm curious. Let's get right to the news, especially given the train derailment in East Palestine, the toxic chemical spill. Do you worry that blue-collar Americans feel still very much left out, even by Democrats in Washington? And exactly this is something that Republicans will use to further that narrative.
Yeah, thanks, Mika. Great to be back. I see we got the whole band back together with Barnacle and Danny and the whole crew. So it's great to be back, be back with you guys. Yeah, I think, what happened in East Palestine is just an example, one of kind of the issues facing like corporate America and having a good regulatory regime to keep people safe. But this is an area of the country that has been largely forgotten and ignored. And so you throw this on top of it, which is just a heartbreaking situation that those families are going through. We do have a lot of work to do. I don't quite frankly think that either party has done a great job messaging wise of really getting into these communities. And so they default into the culture wars. And that's why I've always said we've got to continue to have this robust economic agenda talking about blue collar workers. If we don't, we will not have a strong, robust national party. Yeah, did we win elections? Yes, we did. But look who we were running against. We barely beat a bunch of fascists and extremists who supported an insurrection and don't believe that the 2020 election was legitimate. So we've got a lot of work to do to build a robust national majority for the American people.
I'm curious, Tim, though, it seems like there's a parallel thing going on here. I mean, first of all, yes, I think you're right. Blue-collar Americans still don't feel like White House or Democrats might be representing them. But where is it coming from? Because if you look at the record of this presidency, you would say that perhaps he accomplished more than any other modern American president. You could make that argument from the Inflation Reduction Act to the CHIPS Act. I could go on for the next 2 minutes listing the points on the board. So what's the issue?
Well, I think this focus on blue-collar workers that you mentioned with Third Way and some of these other issues that I'm trying to address now kind of post-Congress is really how do we put those workers front and center? And I think you're absolutely right. You look at what's happened in the last year and policies coming from the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act. President Biden is going to have a lot to run on. We just got to make sure that that message makes its way down to the East Palestinians of Ohio, to the blue-collar folks in Ohio, and they just quite haven't seen it yet. And that's going to be the campaign over the next year. That's actually why I think Sherrod Brown's going to win his Senate race here in Ohio, because the CHIPS Act is coming online. We're going to have thousands of jobs. Average wage is going to be $135,000 a year, and 50 to 60% of those jobs, Mika, you're not going to need a college degree for. You look at the battery plant that General Motors and LG Chem Ultima sells up in my old congressional district, going to be almost a couple thousand workers. They just unionized. Yeah. So these are the kind of things that you've got to just go like a laser beam, focus on this. The Brent Spence Bridge. You've been talking about that your whole career. I've been talking about that my whole career. That's actually going to get done in Ohio. Union construction workers. So we've got the platform to run on. We've got to focus like a laser beam, campaign like crazy on these issues, because you're right. And the Republicans are sitting around talking about, as you said, Dr. Seuss or or all these other crazy issues. So there's an opening that's wide for us. We just got to take it.
Congressman, this is Jen Psaki. How are you?
Hi, Jen.
You mentioned in East Palestine they need to see progress, and this is, one of the things that Democrats always need to do better at. I can even say, which is making people who are invisible feel seen. What do you think when the cameras fade away, when people aren't talking about this every day? What needs to happen from the federal government or from Democrats on messaging for the people of East Palestine and other forgotten communities in Ohio?
Well, showing up is 90%. I think being there, I think that the fact that Secretary Buttigieg was there the other day was a good sign. I would encourage the president to be there and not forget, because you're right. I mean, this is going to be a long haul here. There have been train accidents before in the past. I think there was one in the Lehigh Valley in the 70s. They're just getting around to cleaning this stuff up. And this is a heartbreaking situation. All the viewers have been watching this. What are these families going to do? So I think having a strong presence, not going away, being there, consistently informing the community there about what's going on, but making sure that they know that the federal government is on their side, not just politicians showing up, but the actual bureaucrats and the people who are doing the work, making sure that they have a presence there. This is going to be for decades. I mean, you got to monitor these water tables, make sure that there's nothing in the drinking water. I don't live far from there. And we're concerned about drinking water up here, 30 miles away. So this is not just presence. Be there, show them you care. People don't care what you know. They want to know you care, like Joe was saying earlier.
Tim, what do we do about getting blue-collar workers who have been laid off from a tool and die plant or whatever, and are looking for jobs and have been looking for jobs for the past year, 2, maybe 5 years or so? What do we do about the language of convincing them that the chip factory that you mentioned, that the battery plant that you mentioned, that those are real jobs? I mean, you can say that the average income is 130 grand, no college degree required, but they seemingly don't believe you because they're lost in this. What is the greening of America mean to me as a guy who worked with my hands for 15 or 20 years? What does it mean to me? What do you do about them?
It's got to be the slow, steady drumbeat. I think, there are, 800 workers at the battery plant now that just voted for a union. Like, they're out drinking beer at the bar with their buddies. It's like, hey, I'm in the union. I got a good job. We're building batteries. I think making this a big vision for the United States of America, and let those workers feel like they're contributing to their kids' future. They're building the batteries that are going to bend the curve on climate change. Whether they believed it or not, or believe it or not, their kids believe that climate change is a real issue. And what could make a dad or a mom more proud than saying, I'm helping build a good future for my kids? And I think having infrastructure in place, not the physical infrastructure, but the workforce development infrastructure. I do a lot of work in the natural gas industry, too, trying to displace coal, which is a huge contributor to global climate change. How do we build that pipeline into the natural gas community through, inner city schools, through HBCUs, through rural communities? Build that pipeline so kids know they're going to go into an industry that's going to bend the curve over the next 30 or 40 years, not tomorrow, but over the next 30 or 40 years. And communicating that really robustly is going to be important. But the key, Mike, big vision. America is going to solve this problem. And those working class people, the same people that built the industrial age for America, they're going to build the green age for America.
Former Ohio Congressman Tim Ryan, now a senior visiting fellow for Third Way. Thank you very much for being on this morning. It's great to see you. Come back.
I will. In person. I want to see you guys.
Yay. All right. Also,